Modern Americans, including Christians, are obsessed with comfort. Being comfortable is one of our greatest values and priorities. Something we avoid, because it makes us uncomfortable, is associating with people who have a bad reputation and are on the lower end of respectability. Many people, including some Christians, look down on people who willingly associate with those from the lower echelons of society. Today we will read in Luke 15 that the Pharisees and scribes grumbled when Jesus received tax collectors and sinners. The parables that Jesus spoke in response contain a lesson we should apply to ourselves if and when we come in contact with those who are downtrodden in our society. Yesterday we read in Luke 14:25 that many crowds were going along with Jesus as he went toward Jerusalem. He told the crowd that none of them could be his disciple unless they hated their family and carried their own cross. He told a parable about building a tower to remind the crowds that they needed to count the cost before they started following him. Now let's pick up reading at Luke 14, verse 31. Or what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. This parable also taught the throngs following Jesus that they had to count the cost and consider the ramifications of being with Jesus. They needed to consider everything they were leaving behind, the strength needed for the journey, as well as the potential implications of being associated with Jesus once they arrived in Jerusalem. Verse 33. So then, none of you can be my disciple who does not give up all his own possessions. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. He knew he was going to be crucified. Crowds were following him. It was not possible to be a disciple of Jesus at that point without giving up their possessions. They could not take their possessions with them on the journey to Jerusalem. Today, many Christians want to gain as many converts to Christianity as possible, so they minimize the downside of being a Christian. They don't encourage people to count the cost. They pretend there isn't a negative side to identifying with Jesus. The reality is there is a cost in the 21st century of being a Christian, just as there was in the first century. When we evangelize, we need to be honest about that and urge people to count the cost first. Verse 34. Therefore, salt is good, but if even salt has become tasteless, with what will it be seasoned? It is useless either for the soil or for the manure pile. It is thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. The purpose of salt is to season food. However, if salt becomes tasteless, it cannot be seasoned with something else. It is worthless. The people following Jesus to Jerusalem needed to be the salt of the earth. However, if they were not willing to give up their possessions in order to follow Jesus, then they were like salt that had no taste. They were worthless. People in modern churches who do not value Jesus over their possessions are also like salt that has no flavor. Chapter 15, verse 1. Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near him to listen to him. Ponder the terms Luke used to describe the people coming near Jesus. They were tax collectors and sinners. Matthew, Mark, and Luke used these terms as a pair 9 times in their gospel accounts. A tax collector was a specific profession that had a terrible reputation, probably well-deserved. The term sinners is a translation of the Greek word hamartolos and is a broad category. We often assume sinners refers to prostitutes, but the Greek word porne specifically meant prostitutes. Hamartolos probably referred to both prostitutes and people who practiced other sins. The point is that people coming near Jesus had bad reputations. Verse 2. And both the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling, saying, This man receives sinners and eats with them. Notice both the Pharisees and scribes were grumbling. The word grumbling tells us the Pharisees and scribes were looking down on Jesus for receiving people with bad reputations. Modern Americans are obsessed with comfort. So are American Christians. Associating with those on the low end of respectability is uncomfortable. We often grumble when we need to do so. Verse 3. So he told them this parable, saying, What man among you, if he has 100 sheep and has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open pasture and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I tell you that in the same way there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Jesus was a religious teacher. He taught morality, among other things. If the Pharisees and scribes truly cared about people, they should have been glad that the tax collectors and sinners were listening to someone who might turn them from their sinful lifestyle. As Christians, we should be glad when people in our society who have bad reputations are willing to talk to Christians. They are the ones who need the message of Jesus the most. That does not mean we do anything that endorses their sin or pretends they don't need to turn from their sin, but we need to love them no matter how despicable their lifestyle or how uncomfortable it is to associate with them. Verse 8. Or what woman, if she has 10 drachmas and loses 1 drachma, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have found the drachma which I had lost. In the same way, I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. The woman did not celebrate over the coins that were not lost. She celebrated over finding the lost coin. Likewise, the Pharisees and scribes should have been celebrating that sinful people were listening to truth. We need to celebrate when the so-called lowly people in our society associate with those who can help them, especially help them find truth and freedom from their sin. Verse 11. And he said, A man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate that falls to me. So he divided his wealth between them. And not many days later, the younger son gathered everything together and went on a journey into a distant country, and there he squandered his estate, living recklessly. Now when he had spent everything, a severe famine occurred in that country, and he began to be impoverished. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he was desiring to be fed with the pods that the swine were eating, and no one was giving anything to him. Swine were unclean. First-century Jews were obsessed with the cleanliness laws, so the thought of tending swine would have been repulsive. Jesus included swine in his story to paint a picture of a man who had hit rock bottom. The people coming to Jesus were also people who were at the bottom of life. Tax collectors had a terrible reputation. That profession probably attracted people who had no moral compass. Sinners may have been sinners because they had no other way of earning a living. Tomorrow we will read the conclusion of this parable. Modern Americans are obsessed with comfort, so are American Christians. Associating with those in the low end of respectability is uncomfortable. We often grumble when we need to do so. However, as Christians, we should be glad when people in our society who have bad reputations are willing to talk to Christians. They are the ones who need the message of Jesus the most. That does not mean we do anything that endorses their sin or pretends they don't need to turn from their sin, but we need to love them no matter how despicable their lifestyle or how uncomfortable it is to associate with them. Thanks for visiting Bible Mountain. If you have already joined my email list, thank you, and please tell others about Bible Mountain. If you have not joined my email list yet, please do so now. In order to join, go to BibleMountain.com, click on subscribe, and that will take you to a page where you can sign up. Your email address will not be sold nor given away. Once again, thanks for visiting Bible Mountain.